Despite a national lockdown, a Soweto teenager was raped and killed on her way to a local shop. A distraught Nandi Sebego describes the frantic search for her daughter.
We were told there was a female body that was found between the age of 14 to 25 years. They really brutalized her. She was unrecognizable.
I'm not 25 because she was well built. And
the Gauteng Department of Education has described the act as barbaric and cruel.
It is quite sad what transpired there, and we don't really wish that to happen to any child. And we just want to say we are puzzled actually about what people can do. I mean, during this time that we are focusing on the pandemic, everyone should be at home, that people can still find time to go and commit such a brutal, a gruesome act, which is really unwarranted.
Police say no arrests have yet been made.
No arrest yet, and we are calling to anyone who might have witnessed the incident to come forward so that it can assist us with our investigation.
The Sebeko family has also asked the community to assist them with any information. Mahlako Komane, SABC News, Soweto.
Abuse, rape happening at that age, it's really, really barbaric, and it's really quite saddening. But still, Nicolette Wagamashile, one of our bush Pakrishma Pulaning, and now, during this time, lockdown, you're not thinking for these kind of things are the things that could potentially be happening. But as one of the report, these are some opportunities that and they're raping, and they're abusing, and they're beating, and they're assaulting the people that they're living with. And it's quite sad because we've seen it across the world. Numbers have risen. Now, France also, when it started its lockdown around March, had an increase of these types of cases being reported, 30% increase. Singapore, 30%. The USA, 35%. Now, this is shocking because people are supposed to be thinking about how do we flatten the curve, COVID-19. But
ngithi ngibingelele nasemakhaya komncane nangomdala, of course igamelo Dagamiya uGcwanini Sibe Uzizi, and ngithi ke hleli phezulu kwendaba, we saw 2,300 complaints come in, of course, and this is gender-based violence complaints that came through the first week of the lockdown. Even though we are 14 days into the second part of the extension in South Africa, we did see that number was not just started when the lockdown started in South Africa, but it's something eqale even before. Abanye phinde baphikisa ukuthi cha ngempela leya mangiyazi ngijwayele manje because of the lockdown. And today we get to really understand ukuthi inkinga ingakuphi and what are the different levels when it comes to abuse and the different ways that people experience it. Sithole ithubu lamhlanje sihlale nosisi naye ozosicela nje kancane about her story.
Yes, Melody, I think it's also important to remind everybody that we are taking your voice notes and your video messages on 0723161329. What can you share about today's topic? We are talking about your abuse, violence that's happening during this lockdown. But we are speaking to Anonymous on the phone. Anonymous, we like in a relationship, feeling abusive emotionally, sexually, physically, in every other form of abuse. And then she moved on into another relationship, and she feels that at least in this one, Anonymous, Dumela, and welcome to Daily Thetha, ma'am. Siyaphila. Usichazele sisi wami ngoba uthe you were previously in an abusive relationship where it was physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Can you tell us about that relationship, Buti? What actually happened?
Okay, this guy was dating the woman that I was and then got figure life katsini ukuthi sisijwayelana khona sekumnandi ngilongiyovakasha kubo mara sengigcine sengihlala full time kubo.
Yeah.
And then kwaya sekuqhubeka, and then I got pregnant at once. Kanti ukungishaya kwakhe ngizothola miscarriage lapho.
Sure.
And then kula uzongithuka khona ngitshela ukuthi ngibulele umntana wakhe, stuff like that. kubo sekungena ifamily yakhe sebangithuka bangitshela le way ngisi lesingakhona ngalento engiyenzile ukuthi like ngiframe umntanabo ukuthi uye engithi ubulele umntanami something like that mangibatshela ukuthi okay ama pictures lawa enginawo umntaneni makangishaya angikhama ngama plastic bag ishuthini lento leyo umama wakhe was like hayi ayikho yonke lento leyo sekufike namaphoyisa so bathatha statements nani ngagcina ngamtshela ngathi ngcono sihlukane because manje soyangihlukumeza.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna move so just to understand ngalahleki at what so when uqala ukuthi akushaye were you guys first fighting ngomlomo like ukukhuluma like was there any resistance ngaleso sikhathi?
No, like yena bekumfana angazi ukuthi ngayibeka kanjani une-enga like he was doing drugs at that time. So mangabe he didn't smoke uvela avukwe isilwane nje and then makaseka right seka come down seka ithela into yokubhema akasakhumbuli ukuthi wenzeni.
Anonymous, even manje in the new relationship uthi izinto azisahambi right khawusitshele ukuthi what's happening manje?
Nomntwana no guy lona so naye is doing the very same thing. It does drugs. So my family doesn't know because ngiyam protect ngokuthi ngiyamthanda.
Yeah.
Kodwa nakhona isaqhubeka still like that. Uyangihlukumeza.
So I guess ngene ukuthi Swami when all these things started were we already during lockdown or was before lockdown uqalile kulo musho ubhuti lo ozwana naye?
Lo bhuti engizwana naye manje baby daddy I lockdown mhlambe bese iqalile mara umongameli bekangakayi extend.
And Anonymous, you say ukuthi relationship yakho the previous relationship bebakushaya. In this one akakushayi per se, but you still feel good it's better now. Is that how you really feel? Angifuna ukuthi usichazele ukuthi why do you feel it's better now in the type of abuse that you are getting?
I cannot say it's better because naye usa is still doing drugs nani lo ngayidedeli wa mama. Yeah, usase kanjalo so naye unokusuka ukuthi makangabhemanga ake athi nje ukungivikisa kancane bese kuba right and then uyazi ukuthi mangikwatile I can just open my legs forcefully and then ayenze into ayenzayo bese ayaqeda kuphela.
Siswami why ungamshiyi?
So because the courage you had ukushiya the previous guy, do you have that same courage ukushiya lona?
He told me one thing ukuthi mangamshiya uzongibulala nomntanami. Yeah, so into engizothi ngiyayisaba because angazi ukuthi ngiwenzani even though ifamily yami ngiyayitshela they're gonna be like sakhuza before wathi yamxolela usabuyela futhi so angisazi right.
Siswami siyaxolisa ngiyezwa nakhona futhi ngathi uyakhala siyaxolisa ukuthi nje ukuthi sivula amanxeba kodwa sibonge futhi ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi usithembe as idaily Thetha ukuthi sixoxe nawe because it's not something easy. But ngiyacela ukuthi on today's show please make sure ukuthi uyabukela kakhulu Siswami and just maybe we'll have an opportunity to nawe succeed and give you options ukuthi ungaphuma kanjani kulesimo kusona because gender-based violence doesn't just start physically. It doesn't start with me hitting, it starts with me saying things and verbally abusing you emotionally.
And I mean if somebody that's already abuse on its own. But we do have a clinical psychologist who's going to come on the show. How do you maneuver, not even just for lockdown, but also looking at how much lockdown is exacerbated those tensions and the conflict and really gives people that conducive environment to perpetrate this type of violence.
Where we continue the conversation and also look into the possibilities of how can we help you to get out of your situation.
One time in Tekile again, I met this young man. He had such an amazing voice. Like I just fell in love with his voice. He had such a powerful voice, such an amazing voice. And I realized things actually started changing. This guy was not the person I fell in love with. If I break up with him, he's going to kill himself. And he was not saying anything. He was just looking at me, but he was busy choking me. He was just looking at me directly into my eyes. I ran like nobody's business. I ran like someone on a I was crying and I was running. And I ran until Nikifita Kako main road to Motutwala taxi di Tamayati. Sayang ko pa. Kakena ko taxi in a tauta. So Hansekili Kotsileng Eyankopara, I think 30 minutes later, I get calls from unknown numbers.
Hello?
Are okay, Lily. I'm not a paramedic. You're okay. There has been an accident. You're okay. What kind of accident and why are you phoning?
Welcome back to Daily Thetha. So, at what point does the person where you found solace, found love and found comfort become your hell? And that is what the Orange Couch does. It tells us those stories of these survivors that really truly have gone through some of the most difficult times in their lives at the hands of people that they really love. Gender-based violence is a serious problem that we've got in South Africa. And on the line, we're going to be joined by Salvan Munsami, who's the producer of the show that you've just seen right now. It's an SABC 1 series called Orange Couch. Salvan, welcome to Daily Thetha, Papa.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Salvan, and I think we can jump straight into the conversation because there's so much that we want to be able to get out of you. What is the role, what's the importance, what is the purpose of a show like this in South Africa?
You know, Orange Couch is quite an effective program in the sense that we felt as a team, let's create a program that will have a huge impact and yet not be too dramatic. Because we felt that in our society, in our country, in our world, we have what we call 16 days of activism that starts around the 25th of November and ends on the 10th of December. Now, in an ideal world, imagine if abuse starts on that day and ends on the other day. At least we know it's contained. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We just gave it that period of time.
Yeah.
We want to build an image, a brand called Orange Couch, that it has to last throughout the year. It has to be visual in every place that you go to. And the way we tell the story is very different as well. We didn't want to use graphic photos of women who are abused or people who are abused.
Yeah.
We didn't want to show any violence in terms of reenactments.
Yeah.
Because we felt we want to keep it family orientated as well. And what we did was we introduced Foley sounds that amplifies the message and the pain of the person in terms of the storytelling.
Salvan,
yes.
If I can just jump in there, I mean, you speak about these stories and the stories, you know, the series lingering longer than the period given, beyond a year, beyond years. I mean, I want to go back and understand what's the root of the women staying, because it seems to be a very common point in many of these conversations that women struggle to leave when it comes to gender-based violence.
You know, it is a very difficult situation because firstly, in any relationship, you fall in love and you get these beautiful promises from both sides. And, you know, from a woman's point of view, in most of the stories that we dealt with, you know, she looks at her partner as the leader, the person that's going to guide her through life. And slowly there's a breakdown and you get the first slap and then thereafter there's an apology and I'm sorry, you made me do this, why did you do this? That is what the conversation leads to. Now the female, after being abused, is almost felt like it was her fault. But there's some nice loving conversations thereafter. I promise I won't do it again. And you know, and also the little gifts, you know, taking them out, buying a dress, buying a little maybe another a phone, or any sort of gift that gives them that kind of intimacy in the relationship again. Now, when this thing builds up all the time, and this promise is coming, you know, you almost find there's security in this person and the relationship, but it's difficult to leave because now, by then, your family, in most cases, we found that your larger family where you were born into, they don't really support you in most cases. So who do you go back to? Your self-esteem, your confidence has been broken. How can you just walk out and find yourself a job or get into the world alone because you may have children at that point in time? So there's a lot of complications that come. So it's difficult to just pack up and leave. But in the stories that we've done, you know, it was that last straw.
So Van,
they had to go.
Yeah, sorry to interject there. Often when we have this conversation of abuse, men also then come out and say, we also are victims of abuse. Do you guys ever have men on the Orange Couch?
You know, with the Orange Couch, we produced 16 episodes. And we had just one story of a male. And this gentleman was brave enough to come out and talk about his plight, being abused. And we did put calls out there, you know, you do the searching through organizations.
Socially, I mean, it's not acceptable for men to speak about abuse.
No. But we found that now going into, you know, now that Orange Couch has been broadcasted on air, and the reaction that we got, a lot of men have come up and they want to participate. And in our in season 2, we have a few stories already that we have in the can that's ready to be told. And you know, it is amazing because you don't think that you know, men will come out and talk, and understandably so, because men are taught to be macho, men are taught not to cry, and all those kind of stigmas that come through. So and yet we forget that we are human.
You know, it's a very great point that you raised, because I mean, I'm sitting and saying to myself, some men are sitting in abusive relationships, and the biggest problem is also a lack of identity, of understanding that, listen, something is going wrong because I'm a man. It's part of the process. But not just to look at men, also children involved in this. I'd want to ask, before we let you go, is what is your message to everyone affected, man, woman, child, in no order or form, but human beings in our continent?
Yeah, you know, it's in my experience, I found that abuse is like a silent drug. As long as it stays in the dark, nobody's going to help you. You're not going to be able to get out of it. You have to throw some light on it. And the way to throw light on it is, you got to be able to speak to somebody about your challenges in your relationship. Quite often, we are scared to tell somebody else about what's happening in our house, in our bedroom. But you have to be able to start talking to others. You got to let somebody know that you are being abused in a relationship, that your children are being abused, traumatized. You got to speak to maybe your school teachers, the teachers at school. You're going to talk to maybe the religious leaders, the community members, somebody, even family members that you trust, that won't use it as a point of gossip. But as a form of construction that you can help build. And in that way, the more you talk about your challenges, your partner realizes that you are being vocal about it. And it's a slow way of at least getting out of it. Yes.
I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Daily Thetha for the amazing work that you guys are doing with the team. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming onto the show. We look forward to season 2, of course, of The Orange Couch on SABC 1. But also with that, we look forward to, after the break, we get to speak about the mind and heart of the abuser and how these things stay with them. Why do they actually abuse? After the break.
Right here on Daily Thetha on SABC 1. So, gender-based violence during Yona lockdown, but in general, gender-based violence, it being a serious problem in our society in South Africa right now. Concentrate sexual abuse, especially during a time when we should be coming together as a society to fight corona COVID-19 as by beta. We do have joining us on the line Professor Mzika Zinduna, who's a clinical psychologist. What are the psychological effects? What is the abuser thinking? What is the person who is being abused? And I don't necessarily want to call them just a victim, because sometimes they are survivors of Yona abuse. Professor, welcome to Daily Thetha.
Thank you, Nicolette. Just a correction before we go ahead. I'm a research psychologist, not a clinical psychologist.
Okay, perfect.
And
yes, Professor.
I conduct research, yes, in the field of sexual and reproductive health, and I'm a scholar of gender-based violence.
Oh, lovely. Then
That's
you're definitely right person for us to be able to speak to, because we want to go into the research. And I think we'll perhaps start with the perpetrator, Professor. Right now, a perpetrator, obviously, they're used to abusing. And during this lockdown, it may exacerbate their reasons. What are the psychological understandings of a perpetrator?
I think we need to go back to our understanding of what is gender-based violence against women for us to understand what the answer to this question is.
Okay.
The answer to all the questions around gender-based violence against women are not simple.
Yes.
And so when we ask the question, what is going on in the mind of a perpetrator, we are reducing gender-based violence to a person. And yet gender-based violence is part of a system.
Okay.
It is part of a system where we raise and we create a norm for men and other people who are not men sometimes to perpetrate and perpetrate gender-based violence. So I use both concepts to perpetrate, because all of us, we create environments for perpetrators to strive.
When you say
when we create
those environments,
when we create that, we are allowing the perpetrators to continue in their minds to believe that it is okay to perpetrate violence against women.
I'm worried, Professor, sorry to come in. I'm very worried, because it means that I, as Nicolette, sitting here, I'm also part of that society that's contributing to creating this environment.
Oh, yeah. We create this environment because sometimes we are bystanders when violence is happening around us to women. We do not stop the perpetrator right on the spot and intervene. We, depending on where it is happening, remember, gender-based violence against women happens in many contexts, but today's conversation is about the domestic sphere, because we are locked in our homes. But remember, we are locked in our homes with people who normally perpetrate violence against women in public settings, in schools, in churches, in families, in the workplace. So where we work, if you see that happening to a woman by their supervisor who is a man, and even sometimes a supervisee who refuses to admit supervision from a woman just because they undermine a woman, we create that environment. When it happens in the churches that we go to, and we do not stop male leaders from undermining women in our churches, we allow them to continue. When it happens at school and we don't teach teachers, we are allowing it. So now all of these perpetrators are now locked at home with their children, with their nephews and nieces, with their wives and girlfriends, and they continue to perpetrate. So in their minds, there is nothing wrong that they are doing because it has become a norm to them.
Professor Nduna, ngithi ngene lapho ngibuze. I mean, isikhathini esiningi la sibona khona abantu behlukumeza umuntu wesifazane or ingane. The bigger issue becomes ukuthi nami njengomuntu wesilisa ohlala kamakhelwane ngifuna ukusiza. Angikwazi ungena indaba zabantu ababili sikhuluse kanjalo. At what point do we have an access to this conversation or even help?
Okay, that's very important. That's exactly why I started off by saying we create the environment for the perpetration to continue. When we have a saying that says, already you are saying this is a private matter, and yet violence against women should not be a private matter. That's the only time in my life when I say, in fact, when a person asks me, when I'm because a person is being violated. So when there is violation that's happening between two people, whether it is in the neighborhood, whether it is in my family, whether it is at the workplace, that is exactly where we should intervene as human beings.
Ngiyayithanda leyo approach yakho, Professor, because I think I also need, as a woman especially, you know, where there's violence being perpetrated. Let's talk about a little bit. We had an anonymous call earlier on in the show, and she's finding herself in a situation where she feels the violence that she's going through, or the abuse that she's going through now in the relationship she's in now, seems a little bit better than when the previous relationship. But what I'd like to understand, what keeps her there? What also, how does she attract the same type of relationship where she ends up finding herself as a victim of abuse?
So remember what I've just said earlier. Violence against women is a system.
Yes.
And so perpetrators are part of the system.
Yes.
And so you can change relationships, and you might find yourself in a relationship with another man who is similar in a way to your previous relationship. And for a long time in the field of psychology, we have then termed this particular woman as a battered woman. We call it a battered woman syndrome, a woman who moves from one abusive relationship to the other. And then we say this is the woman that attracts abusive men. We forget that, in fact, in a society, we have a cohort of abusive men. And so when a woman chooses a partner, they choose from a cohort of abusive men. And that is why the anonymous caller seems to be confused about how can I leave my relationship that is abusive and go to another one. Yes, it is slightly better, but it is still abusive. And then a woman might doubt herself and think that I have attracted an abusive partner, and yet it is because out there is a population of abusive men.
Now that worries me, Professor, because that sounds like we've got a society of abusers that are just roaming around the streets because they are part of the system. Is it then normal to justify at least mona one roga fela?
We make it normal because we compare the extent of the violation. So violations against women exist in a continuum. Most of the time, what we measure are physical assaults, we measure sexual assaults, we measure femicide, and yet there's violence that's happening that is very difficult to measure because even women themselves don't have a language to explain what is happening to them. So from a continuum of disregard and disrespect, we then train women to accept those levels of violence, and we train women to accept that it is a norm that, you know, Tata Kabani always does that. You know, when a person starts to say that Tata Kabani will never do that. That partner has, he will never do that. That person has trained you to accept his violation. So if your partner will never listen to you when you ask them to do something, they've trained you to accept that. Then women, sometimes what they do is then to say to each other, but
Professor,
when we do that,
you are dropping the gems, what are everything that we should know as a society. We are still coming back with you after the break. So because we want to carry on with the conversation. And I think, Melody, it's important that we bring in another anonymous caller. Professor, but we do all that when we come back from the break.
Reports about the escalation of gender-based violence cases during the lockdown period is worrisome. More than 87,000 cases have been reported so far. We seem to be a nation that wants the government to run our families instead of us learning to live peacefully and in harmony with each other. We have sacrificed our voice of reason for violence. Where is the ability to reason and engage with each other? We have sacrificed love, respect, and humility in the altar of rights. Freedom of expression has been elevated beyond civility. What happened to our first love, fellow South Africans? Let this 21 days lockdown declared by our President Cyril Ramaphosa not to be taken as an opportunity to perpetrate gender-based violence and femicides against women and children, but rather to fight against the spread of coronavirus. Everyone has the right to life. So it is our responsibility to make sure no life is lost during this lockdown. Stop gender-based violence and femicides.
Definitely stop gender-based violence and femicide against women specifically, because, you know, we're looking at COVID-19 right now. Gender-based violence, right? An existing issue in South Africa. But I think also quite important is that he mentioned something about us relying on the government. And we need to move away from this reliance on the government to solve this gender-based violence, because at the end of the day, now we welcome back Professor Nduna, who is a research psychologist, but also a scholar of gender-based violence. And she's been giving us quite something to think about, you know. Because understand Professor Uriking now, what we've created a system. Professor, welcome back to Daily Thetha.
Thank you.
Professor, while you are on the line with us, we're also going to be welcoming an anonymous caller who's going to also deliberate a little bit of her situation. And I would like you, Professor, to listen in on that situation so that you can at least assist us in assisting our anonymous caller. So please just hold for us, Professor. Anonymous, hello.
Hello.
How are you, ma'am?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you for being on our show. Can you please tell us a little bit about your story? We know that you have served divorce papers currently. If you can just give us the backstory of what has been happening.
Okay, I come from a mixed multiracial background.
Okay.
I've been married for more than 25 years. I have 3 children who are now adults, but over the years it's actually progressed. The violence, the mental, emotional abuse has progressed. And for a long time, I thought that it was myself that needed fixing. Every time a situation escalated, and a few days later, the person would say sorry, and then you think, okay, tomorrow would get better.
Yeah.
And it carried on and on and on. And it's only now in my mature years that I found out that I was worthy to demand better, to be treated better, and to be respected as a human being, first and foremost, before as a wife and a mother. And the hardest part for me in all this was when I went to family and said, this is my situation. I need help with A, B, C, D. There was a situation where I was told, you're going to leave your matrimonial home, and where are you going to go with his children? Who will raise them? It's not our duty.
Sure.
And that like broke my confidence. And I actually went into a cycle of depression.
So if I can ask, Anonymous, if I can ask there quickly, as we develop into your story, at this point, did you feel that you could trust anyone except your family to tell them what you're going through, to tell them what you're feeling as you started approaching the sense of depression?
I felt shame. So how could I tell the world outside what was happening inside?
I hear you.
And to be judged. And the thing was, when I eventually found the courage to have a voice and tell another woman who was in a position to give me advice and assist me, instead she actually shamed me.
Sure.
Sure, Anonymous, it's quite a very saddening story. And they say abuse has a cycle. And I'm assuming that your children have been in the last 25 years, whenever the abuse started, they were also being part of this abuse, experiencing it. I mean, maybe yes. So do you find that that has had some impact on the way they engage with their partners?
Yes, more so in my girl child.
Yeah.
And it's until that we've gone for counseling, my girl child and my son, and I've learned that was not the norm as human beings to treat each other, and that it wasn't us that needed to be fixed.
Yeah. No, and I think you're making such valid points, and I'm glad that you guys went for counseling. Professor Nduna, I think this is where I'd love to bring you in, and I mean, a key point that she made is that the shame and the guilt and the women that also don't know how to receive such stories, how do we educate our society today to be able to help people in these situations?
Thank you, and thank you to Anonymous for sharing that experience. I think what is important in terms of how we should educate our people is, one, we need to start very, very early. We are not doing enough to educate boys and girls about gender-based violence against women. And because we leave it till late, then we run the risk that boys and girls will grow into young men and women and get into relationships and get into marriage without being equipped about how to deal with violence in their relationships. One of the probable reasons why we leave this until late is because violence against women in domestic relationships is considered to be for sexual partners. And when we shy away from discussing what happens in sexual relationships, then we shy away from also discussing possibilities that there might be violence in these relationships.
Professor,
it's very important that we start before people are engaged in relationships.
Professor, just a quick one, listening to Anonymous, she says, when the abuse was happening, it would be abuse, the next day it would be gifts, it would be sorry, it would be compliments, the abuse then happens again. It feels like there's a bit of behavior modification that comes with this abuse or this pattern of abuse. But now we do get in some instances where culture, society, religion justifies this behavior modification. So how do we change those structures?
I'm trying to think about what we mean by behavior modification, because if it means the partner has changed when they buy you gifts, that is not behavior modification. When a person comes back and they buy you gifts and they do the groceries and they pay for the electricity, that's their responsibility. But they may not have changed their behavior, and that is why then some women stay in this cycle, because they view that as a change of behavior.
Yes.
What would be an indication of a change of behavior in your relationship is when he does not beat you, he does not disrespect you, he does not swear at you, he does not undermine you. When he does the things that he should be doing normally, that is not an indication of a change of a behavior.
Could he be changing your behavior, altering the way you think that you should behave? Because she says something about the fact that for a long time, she thought it was her fault.
Yes, because abusers are like that. Abusers will make you feel that it is your fault. Abusers are very manipulative. That is what research has shown us. Because remember, they need a reason to met out the abuse. So they need you to be the reason for their behavior. So they need to point out that it is you who does not listen, because they are looking for an appropriate wife who does not drink and you keep drinking. And so it is your drinking problem. They need a reason that they are looking for an appropriate wife who does not dress in appropriate way. So it is you who was dressing in an inappropriate way when he took you to a party. So he needs to be the one who finds the reason. They want a wife who listens to them, and so you did not listen to him. So they always need to find you on the wrong, because in their minds, it is their responsibility to put you in line.
Professor
to make you
Nduna-
fall in line, to make you listen to them.
Sure. Professor Nduna, and I think you're dropping some very important elements of self-introspection as men, but also as women. Thank you so much to the professor for being with us on the show today, Professor Nduna, talking about, of course, so much that we need to know, but also Anonymous, thank you for trusting us with your story this morning on Daily Thetha. We really appreciate your courage, and we're really happy to see the progress in your life.
Thank you so much.
So with that being said, of course, we need to talk about getting out. How do I get out? This is the chance where we ask you to not move, because after the break, we speak about that life. Let's go.
Welcome back to Daily Thetha. In an abusive relationship, because that is probably going to be the crux of how you actually survive and you actually save yourself. Now, to have this conversation with us, we are joined by Lindelwe Nxumalo, who is a manager at the Women's Rights Action 8 SA, and they are a global justice federation, and they support other federations or associations that deal with gender-based violence. Lindelwe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. WHO reports 60,000 women that are, dealing with gender-based violence in South Africa. How did we get here?
Oh, wow. Look, I think as a country, we have a history of a lot of violence in our history. And one of the things that we've learned about the issues that around gender inequality is that where there's high levels of inequality between the genders, it results in high levels of violence. And so we're seeing that in a very hectic way in South Africa. And also, I think because for the longest time, our efforts, joint efforts, both government, NGO sector, and civil and other civilians, hasn't been as strong on this issue. And so, like anything that goes unattended or unaddressed, it's escalated over time. Our interventions haven't been strong around prevention, haven't been strong around ensuring support for victims, and also justice systems that don't punish the perpetrator means that people know that they can do anything and get away with murder, literally.
Lindelwe, this 60,000 WHO report, is it only just reported cases? Could we potentially be looking at a bigger issue?
Yeah, no, we are, definitely. South Africa, we know for a fact that our statistics say only 1 in 4 people will report. And so if you're looking at 60,000, you can definitely know that there's serious underreporting happening and a lot of cases that we don't know about.
And we certainly look at the conversation earlier on the shows that we deal with this cultural thing that at this point, how do we approach this psychology in a practical manner?
No, like we need to change the way in which we approach that, because that's how a lot of violence and abuse is kept under the rug, you know. I think we need to start recognizing that when it comes to violence, when it comes to abuse, quite literally, and especially around such issues, because if somebody dies and there was an opportunity for you to help or to speak up, to say something, that's something that I think we need to shift in our culture, and also valuing women in the same way that you would intervene if it was somebody else who is not able to stand up for themselves.
Yes,
it's complicated, but yeah.
Yes, it's Nxumalo. Ibuyisa futhi the same question that probably comes in to say sometimes the abuser is the one who's afraid to come out, and mina ngiyabona ukuthi bayamlimaza or ngiyabona ukuthi uyalimala in a relationship, and in the same breath, how do I then help someone, for example, who's in lockdown right now, who's afraid to call the police because she knows where does she go? How do we then help people who are sitting in situations like that?
Well, the great thing is that we have amazing organizations, even during lockdown, who are available. One, keep from that violent situation, and then number 2, either a shelter or a safe house across the country. So we have shelters across the nation. Of course, shelters there's they're struggling to find a lot of beds. but there's definitely usizo khona, you know. And it is tough, especially because, you know, if you're in a situation where you're with an abuser, phone is difficult, but there are WhatsApp lines and SMS lines that you can use.
Please
that
tell
at
us those
least, you know,
lines.
you're not on the phone.
Please share them with us.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Let me just read them out. So there is 08060 1011. Okay, that is for support, as well as helplines for counseling. I think what I'll also do is that I'll also share these numbers with your producers because there's quite a lot of them.
Sure.
But for immediate help, there's 0800 428 428.
Okay. All right.
For a call back, it's *120 *78 67.
Okay.
And then for your WhatsApp line, it's 065-989-9238.
Siswam, we really appreciate your time with Nati today to help guide umuntu ohlele ekhaya, umuntu omusha, umuntu omdala, even the kids that want to help uniguma. Thank you for being on the show with Daily Thetha. Thank you very much. We appreciate you on behalf of Daily Thetha and SABC 1 and Mzansi.
And I think definitely it's important to remember those numbers that she was trying to share with most screenings are Daily Thetha, and it's also all going to be on our social media channel. So we will do our best on Daily Thetha's side. And I think it's important, Melody, a circle, you know, abuse is cyclical, you know, it's a cycle all the time. And it's important to remember the moment you take out a link out of a circle, it breaks that entire thing. So very, very important. You are a human being at the end of the day. The rights cannot be violated. So do report and do get out.
Kumbule, it starts with you. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next show on Daily Thetha, only on SABC 1.
Bye.